last we talked to you, you were very concerned about how the depiction of your relationship with Robert Shaw was being depicted on Broadway in the play The Shark is Working. Since then, you've actually seen the play. So I'm curious if you can tell us if your worst fears were realized or if what you thought after having the chance to see Robert Shaw's son's play, Ian.
Well, first, I'm not pointing fingers, but in order to make the evening have some grit, they took my character and shat all over him. And I'm not kidding, it was very painful. It was not true. And they didn't think that they had a drama or a play without distorting someone, and they chose me. And the relationship I had with Robert was as big as he was. He's the largest personality I have ever worked with or encountered. And he was a great actor and a great writer and a great storyteller. And there was no story about a feud until 30 years after the film opened, literally. And when I first heard about it, it was like, are you kidding? And then I went to see it, and if I hadn't been given some preparation for it, I would have wept my way out of the theater. And because they sacrificed whatever I was to this real painful cliche and made him the butt of the joke. And I said to them afterwards, I said, if you'd taken one line from Roy and given it to me, I would have been okay. And the line was, it's an honor to work with you, Mr. Shaw. And that's how I felt, and that's how I thought we all agreed was the true story. And we had one day where I lost my sense of humor, and that was one day. It was not a feud, and so it hurt.
It conflated how confrontational you were as characters in the movie with real life, and wasn't it Carl Gottlieb who sort of perpetuated that myth?
It was Carl and Stephen, and they didn't consult. They didn't think that I was going to take it so personally, but I did. And because it was reviewed and covered by Vanity Fair, that story was going to live probably farther and longer than the true story. So I had reason to be wary.
What was the response to your feedback on the play? Did they understand where you were coming?
Oh yeah, they did. As a matter of fact, Robert's son had shown me an early copy of the play when there was no feud in it. It was all about a visit by Robert's mother to the set. Never happened, and it was as much a fiction or a nonfiction as what they showed. But they were talked into the drama of the feud. And it's too bad because what was much more worthy was the awe in which he was held by me and others. And he once, I came upon him in the hold of the boat, and he was writing something. I said, what are you writing? He said, I'm taking my name off the film version. I said, why? And he said, because they didn't understand the play. And then he read his play, all of it, to me and to whoever was going to walk by. And when he finished, I was speechless and I was crying, and I looked up and the entire crew was at every window, including Stephen, and they were just listening. And it was a story based upon the Eichmann trial in Jerusalem. And you don't know throughout the play whether it's Eichmann or whether it's some insane Jew. And at one point he says, children of Israel, if he had chosen you, you also would have followed where he led. And he was talking about Hitler. And he grabbed you, and you saw how Hitler could seduce the millions of people that he seduced. And you could see him identify the hidden ancient pains of the people who had been affected by Hitler. And so it was a killer. And no one was going to know about that because they so distorted the meaning of the play. And then he said, let me speak to you of love. Let me speak to you of the Führer. And then he described the fact that up until a given moment in the 17th century, the Germans were known as the happiest, friendliest people in Europe. And this was true. Unfortunately, the 30 Years' War was fought on German soil between the Swedes and the Papists. And that meant that Germans were raped, Germans were slaughtered, and they took history on the chin. And it changed them. And he captures this irony of history. And it was brutal and it was beautiful. And that was all going to be forgotten because of the controversy about the writing. And I didn't want to have anything to do with it in that sense. I only wanted to celebrate. I felt the luckiest kid in the business. I was the luckiest actor. And one night, we were taking a break, and he was lying in the bunk next to me, and he says, I know. I'll play the ghost to your Hamlet if you'll play the fool to my Lear. And I said, you got it, but not for 10 years. And he said, why? I said, because you'll eat me. That's why. Because he was such a great actor. And I said, give me 10 years and I'll be ready to do that. And that's how we left one another. We had this date. And then he died. And when he died, it was like so unfair. And we left one another, and we left the film, and we left a good situation. And then, I don't know, 30 years later, the film, which never died, this story of a feud rose up. And it was horseshit. But that story stuck. And then his son wrote the play. I can't fault him for writing the play. I can say that as the one who took it on the chin, I wish that he had found another avenue. And I wish that Stephen and Carl had at least thought for a minute that I was still alive, the only one who was still alive. And what was it going to do to me? So it hurt. And I don't know what you guys think, but actors are not immune to having personal feelings about any of this. And I was in Ireland doing a talk show, and I was introduced to Robert's granddaughter. That's all it took for me to just burst into tears. And I told her all these stories about her grandfather. She'd never met him, and I was telling her. And then the host of the show was telling the audience about how I burst into tears. And he said, "Why did you do that?" I said, "Because it was closure. It was some kind of closure between me and Robert. And you don't get that often enough. So when you see the film the next time, take a long look at that scene, the Indianapolis scene, because I was in the shot the whole time. There was an angle on that I was in the whole time. And I was as caught up in the story and caught up in the fact that he was drunk. And when an actor goes through, like, forgetting his lines or getting loaded or something, no actor in the world has anything but empathy for the guy who's going through it. Not anything. There's no mean-spiritedness that happens. And I have been on the stage with actors who went up, and I was doing a terrible play, and this one actor went up, and this voice from the audience says, "We didn't come here to see no fucking rehearsal." And I turned around and I went, "Oh, yes, you did. And we'd appreciate a little sympathy here, okay? Because we're working. This is called a preview, and we're working. This is not a performance. This is a rehearsal, okay? So I'd appreciate it if you could appreciate what we're doing. And shut up." And you can't imagine what it's like, because you feel, when it's you who's forgotten the line, you think, I don't have a friend in the world. And when it's someone else, all you have are friends. Everyone else in the cast has nothing but empathy and sympathy. And then it happens to you, and you forget all that and think, shit, I'm an asshole. So.
If we can jump a little forward to 1990, I worked on my third movie for Frank Oz called What About Bob? And I was in the art department, and we got the script, you hadn't been cast yet. And we were reading this, and it was, it was fine, it was good. When we heard you were cast, we started reading it with you in mind, and it came to life. I remember, reading it in the art department, and I did your voice a little bit because I heard it, and damn it, you did it exactly like I was imagining, and it was magical. Working down in Smith Mountain Lake for 3.5 months or something, it was a fun time for everyone except you. I can only imagine the tourists you had to deal with all the things going on, and not naming any names, but his name was also Robert. But I just want to know, how was it for you, really? And did you get any enjoyment out of that production at all?
Well, there came a moment when Bill came back from dinner, and we were in this creative meeting, and I said, "Here, look at this. This is funny." And he came up to my nose, put his nose next to my nose, and he said, in a much louder voice than I can do now, he said, "Why don't you shut the fuck up? Everyone hates you, and you are a prima donna, and you are the worst actor I've ever seen, and I think you've killed the film." And he went on, and then he picked up one of these glass-blown ashtrays that weigh about a little tiny bit under a pound. And he backed up and threw it at my face as hard as he could. And it went, psh. And I got up and walked out. And then about 1 o'clock in the morning, I got this phone call that the Disney rep was being fired because he was seen to have dinner with me. And he was calling to say goodbye. And I said, "Well, golly, you have a real problem now, because Bill won't work if you're on the set, and I won't work unless you are." And I hung up. And so they had to iron that out without my help. Every time they called me, I said, "You're talking to the wrong person."
Yeah.
And Bill was an Irish drunken bully. And I didn't say that out loud for 10 years. And 10 years went by, and I said, "Why am I keeping quiet? Who cares? Doesn't matter." So I told the story on television. That was fun. And then I found out that there's this club of people who hate Bill Murray. And I was, I guess, treasurer of that group. And the funny thing is, he makes me laugh even now. He's so funny that he can make me laugh even though I despise him. And we work well together. We actually do work well together.
It was the perfect dynamic for that movie.
Yeah, except I like it to happen because I'm acting.
Right, exactly.
I don't like it to happen because I'm being manipulated into it.
No.
So, I mean, to me, it's a question of being patronized, But
Obviously, everything he said to you with his nose pressed against yours was projecting, because that's exactly what he thought of himself.
I don't know. I can't say.
Well, one of the two of you have an Oscar.
That's right.
And I'm not saying which one.
Would anybody
One
like
of
to
the two
guess?
of us has $1 billion, too. And that's, I'm not saying which one, but I don't think it's me. He's actually made $1 billion, so he's funny. and he's a creator. He's a really brilliant creator. He happens to be an asshole. I'm not an asshole.
No.
I may think well of myself, but that's not being an asshole. I prefer not being an asshole. And that's important to me. When you work with me, you like working with me, and you want to do it again. And if you don't, I'll know. Okay, maybe I have something to correct, but I don't have that problem. I love my work, and I love being a member of a film team, and I tell the truth. So you just got it. I told you the truth.
One time we were watching dailies in that little trailer right next to the production office at Smith Mountain Lake. And you were in there, and I got to sit in for this. I think it was the chicken dinner scene. And after, which was incredibly hilarious, and your responses were perfect and so angst-ridden. But the closest interaction we ever had was after the lights came up and everyone was, sort of shuffling out. I did this. And you turned and you gave me the evilest look I've ever seen. And I felt it through my heart, and it was a wonderful moment that I got to get your attention. But because when I heard that you were cast in it, I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. Of course, when I was 10 years old, I saw Close Encounters, and that's why I'm wearing this geeky costume jacket. And I just always wanted to talk with you about this because I have this theory that I've never seen anyone else talk about. Close Encounters is not about aliens. It's not about UFOs. It's about people who respond to the call of leading a creative life. All the people in the helicopter were, doing artwork, doing sculpture, doing all sorts of things because they had the connection to the mountain. And the story of Roy Neary is that he hears this call and people think he's crazy. And it isn't him that leaves his family. His family leaves him. He tries to bring them back, they won't. So he doesn't leave them. And I'm sad to hear Steven Spielberg talk about how he would never make that film again because he left the family. But I know that you were one of the people that wanted to make sure that it was okay for him to leave at the end. And I think that the thing that pulled me so much was that I felt this pull, and you reach, nirvana at the end, basically, because you've accepted this in your life, and you've, fought all the obstacles in between you and the end. And it's really moving. And it's, I just want to know, did you know any of this during the production? Did you think about this deeply, or did you just do your lines and?
No, I thought about it a lot while we were shooting.
Yeah.
And at the time, I brought it up to Steven. Are you okay about this? And he said yes, and then he was married and he had many children. Yeah. And he then said he wouldn't make the same film. And I said, with all due respect, there is no other ending for this film.
Yeah.
And it has to be the way it is. And I have to give him all the credit for that. And he may have had a bump in the night with his wife. He may have tried to rethink that, but
Because I don't think he believes that actually. I think he says what people
Yeah.
want to hear.
absolutely.
Yeah.
He said he did the ending he should have done,
Yeah.
and he knew it. And the rest was just, going to Thanksgiving dinner and saying, "Hi, Mom."
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
That's it. But I tell you that I have enormous respect for the brutal candor of that ending. Yes, he leaves his children and his wife, and he doesn't look back. And there's not a person on earth that would make a different choice.
Right.
I can go to another planet and see the unseeable and do the undoable and be the first of my species. Give me a break.
Yeah.
I'm not going to throw that away. And maybe if he had had an actor who had, children up the gazoo or something.
Right.
But no, it was a chance to play a grown-up ending in a grown-up story about grown-ups and adults. The first science fiction film that was made for adults.
Absolutely.
And it meant a great deal to all of us. It's the only film I've ever badmouthed every actor in Hollywood to get that part.
Sure.
And I said openly, no one will come out of this alive unless I get this part. And I used to walk by his office and say, Pacino's crazy. And who else was it? Oh, yeah, Gene Hackman is too old. And I got the part on the day I said, Stephen, you need a child to play this part. And he looked up and said, you got it. And because he knew that I gave off this feeling of being a child, not a childish person, but a child. And at the end of the film, you can see that he deliberately cast the entire Earth crew, all the technicians, all the scientists, have one thing in common. They have this childlike wonder on their faces, all of them. Next time you see it, look for that. And you realize that Stephen deliberately cast for that. He wanted people to look up in awe, without fear. And one of the original marketing lines was, there's nothing to fear by looking up. And wow, it was a privilege. Sometimes acting is a doorway into something noble inside you. You don't like to talk about it because it sounds kind of foolish or braggy or whatever. But it's something that actors know. They get to visit so many lives and tell the truth, whatever happens to be that truth. And it's the oldest art form. Think about it. There's no art form that is older than acting because someone, before they painted it on the side of the cave, someone had to go,
Yeah.
or,
Acting out the afternoon activities. Yeah.
and that was us.
Well, before we go to questions from the audience, because I know you're anxious to ask your questions, Suzanne Summers, your dream girl in American Graffiti, passed away. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you just anything you want to say about Suzanne, although you didn't really interact in the movie. You were obsessed with her, but you never actually got to really be in the scene with her. But American Graffiti, which is another brilliant film that Richard is in, is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Just any quick thoughts about American Graffiti and maybe Suzanne before we move on?
First of all, I never met Suzanne during the film, and I have never met Suzanne to this day. And she was not the person I was obsessed with. I was obsessed with the obsession.
Right.
And I knew that. And that's one of the reasons that George cast me, because he actually offered me 2 parts. He said, you could play Charlie's part, Charlie Martin Smith, or yours. And I said, I want to play what I'm playing. And he said, why? And I said, because he's self-aware. And I loved to play that. So you know that scene where I go to my locker and try to open the locker and I can't open it because they've changed the lock. That scene was built for one reason. It was to show that I knew that was going to happen. And I knew that on that night, I would remember. And I would remember that night 100 years in the future. That I would never forget it. And it was important for me to play that, give him that perspective. And, George doesn't give you a lot of background study. So he never told me any of this, but he gave me the part. And so he wanted it. And whenever I can play being aware of my own self-process, I just eat it up. And it's a doorway into knowledge that you normally don't have. I played Dick Cheney, and people said to me, how could you play Dick Cheney? And I said, there's a little bit of Cheney in all of us. And that's why I wanted to play him, because his villainy is my villainy and yours. And there's no such thing as the other and them. It's us, always. So playing Dick Cheney was like falling off a log.
The villain never thinks they're the villain. The villain never thinks they're the villain.
Or else they love being the villain.
One more.
The thing that actors
Okay.
will do is they will find a way to tell the audience, it's not me. It's not me, it's the character. But I'm not that guy. And they will actually find a way to say that to the audience, a little trick. And I say that's disgusting. That's totally wrong.
I don't know if you are going to be able to answer this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Stephen had on Close Encounters a bunch of his director and friends on set down in Mobile. Willard Hike was checking people in on the bus, and he's in the movie. George Lucas was there, and I think he is in one shot in the movie, and I want to know if he is. Right after you're pulled out of the station wagon, and the technician with the gas mask pulls the bird out of the car, the cutaway of seeing the guy's face in the gas mask, I think it's George Lucas. Do you know if it is or not?
I don't know. I mean, I would normally just say, no, it wasn't. But I do know that George liked those kind of little backstage things. And George Lucas did something that I have never seen equaled anywhere, and that is, the difference, or you should know, the difference between what they call a net point and a gross point.
Right.
A gross point is all in, everything that could possibly be part of profit is part of a gross point. A net point is only that much, that part of the deal where it's bereft and stripped of any profit from merchandising or anything like that. And the difference is vast. A net point makes you $10, and a gross point makes you 200,000. That's a difference. And he took one of his points, one of his gross points, and he divided it among the 10 actors who were the leading roles. And he did not change it. He gave it, and he gave it before the film opened, before the film was reviewed, before we had any indication at all that it would go well. And he gave it, and I have made more money from that 1/10 of a gross point than on all the back-end deals that I made for the rest of my life. Yeah. And he did the same thing on Star Wars and divided it up among 4 people and made multimillionaires of all of them from that one gross point.
Until 1997.
What happened then?
When the special editions came out, they're a different production. And so all those deals go away. And it's only the original version that they would get points from.
That's the saddest thing.
It is, isn't it?
Good job, Darren.
Okay.
Broke his heart. Look what happened. Right.
Brought this all down.
You're
So let's go to the audience for some questions. I know there's a big line here, so let's try and get through it while we have the time.
Hi, how are you? I have a question. What were your thoughts and feelings about Jaws before and then after John Williams' score was added?
Eat that.
Let me get it up again, sorry. What were your thoughts and feelings about Jaws before and then after the John Williams score was added?
Well, I actually heard the score before I saw the film.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in the office and Steven said, "You want to hear the music?" And I said, "Has he written it?" And he said, "No, come here. And he turned on a piece by a British symphonic composer and 2 or 3 other slices. And after you heard those 3 pieces, you heard the score. And John Williams is the Albert Einstein of that film. I mean, he's an amazing creature. And he could hear Schindler's List as clearly as he heard Jaws. And as clearly, you can't imagine what it was like to see him sit down at the piano, never having done this before. He sat down at the piano and he played out the main theme of Close Encounters. Da, 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 you know. And I said, "How long did it take you to come up with that?" He said, "As long as it took to sit down at the piano." And he was so much a part of the success of the film. A true, wow, amazing.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Dreyfuss. It's an honor. Thank you for your contributions to art on the stage and behind the camera, or in front of the camera. My question is, when you did stake out with Emilio Estevez, your comedic timing through the whole movie, to me, was just, all your mannerisms were perfect. How was your back and forth with Emilio in terms of, was it a lot of improvisation, or was there a script and you guys just had that natural timing with each other?
Well, there was a lot of improv, and we didn't call it improv, we just called it having fun. And we did. We just had fun. But we had fun within the limitations of character. and the limitations of the situation. And we didn't call them limitations. They were the reality of our lives. And so I was working from that. And Emilio is like, he's the perfect partner. He can improvise or create with you without any hesitation and no embarrassment. And he was great to play with. And I would expect, I haven't seen them yet, but I expect that he'd be a wonderful director for that, because of that. And you identify with the characters you play, so that if a beautiful woman is in love with you, there's a good chance that I'm going to be in love with her. And I ain't kidding around. And there was a review that said, Madeline Stowe is so beautiful that she actually makes Richard Dreyfuss look sexy. And I heartily endorse that review.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Everybody, we are out of time.
Come on.
Yeah, but so what? One more question.
One more.
Richard, is there any roles that you were offered that you said no to and you later regretted? Which one would that be and which role?
I have a list.
I have
I would
one.
never tell you that list because I'd blow my brains out at the
Okay.
end.
Richard, I do have one additional request, if you could grant it. Our minister at our church is a huge, to say the least, fan of Jaws. Could you say hi to him?
Could I what?
Say hi. His name is Charlie.
Maybe later.
Okay.
Now.
All right, thank you.
But remember, I turned down some of the greatest films in the world. And I'm a big idiot for all those mistakes. And I also got out of some pretty big stinkers. So you take the good with the bad.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Richard will be at his table. Please visit him there, buy an autograph, and ask your questions.
And first, as is tradition here at GalaxyCon, they'll be taking a giant group selfie with Richard. It's always such a pleasure.
Thank you,
There's
sir.
never
Thank you
enough
so much.
time. We're so happy to have had this
No, what
opportunity.
you guys ought to do is pick someone like me or someone else and get them for a 2-hour Q&A, because there's never enough time. And this is what you will remember when you leave here. You will remember the questions you couldn't remember at the time. And everyone in the world loves movies and is moved by them. And this is the thing that I think would give you not only pleasure and not only knowledge, but insight and artistry. So don't give us up so easily.
Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you.